Welcome to Bite Size Dental Marketing. Today we have Christopher Nelson. Christopher is the Senior Manager of Vertical Marketing. Chris, you're going to have to tell me what vertical marketing is. I'm going to want to know a little bit about it. But Chris, thanks so much for jumping on the podcast with us. Ian and I and the company, I don't know how many CallRail accounts we have. It's got to be north of 100 across all of our clients. We're big fans, and I know there's a lot of interesting stuff that you guys are rolling out. But just to kick us off, Chris, tell me what vertical marketing is at CallRail.
Thank you for having me, Eric. Thank you for having me. Vertical marketing at CallRail, it is product marketing as it relates to industries. And in particular, how we're here, healthcare is an industry that's a huge focus of ours. And they've asked me to come and to try to grow that business out that we have at CallRail and just increase the customer base that we have. It could be, if you were doing vertical marketing, it could either be by industry or it could be by geography. We've chosen to do it by industry at this point. So that's why I'm here. I started with legal, moved into home services. Now I'm with healthcare.
Now, Christopher, I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you're a legit practicing attorney back in the day. How does a guy go from being an attorney to running a channel at CallRail?
It's been a long road. Definitely a little bit different path than others might take. I practiced law for about 6 years. Moved from there to the first client that I had actually had and did their HR and legal. And then I moved into transition from there to doing strategy and marketing. What I found is that marketing has a lot in common with a law practice in the sense that, you are crafting communications, you're understanding strategies to attract new customers. And so it can relate pretty well. And just taking that communication skill and moving it in. And then from the previous company that I had been at, there was an opportunity with CallRail and I was able to take.
Nice. Now, when you look out today at what's going on with CallRail, what do you see as the biggest shifts in the technology or in the platform over the last year?
That's a good question. We started out, our bread and butter is call tracking and form tracking. So any kind of tracking of the leads that are coming into your business. We've moved into more AI-powered solutions and really had that same kind of trend that you're finding throughout technology with AI. We had been doing AI since 2016 with our conversation intelligence product, which allows you to record, transcribe, summarize. But we've now moved into a new product that we call Convert Assist, which is taking those transcriptions, taking those summaries, and being able to actually coach your team, being able to spit out a follow-up to how you should answer a call, or being able to give you an action plan on what you might do with that lead.
And on that, would you use calls that were marked as successful calls? Of course, we're in the dental space and we deal with this all the time. Are we converting the calls that is being generated by marketing? And a big part of what I do, I work on the client services side, is having a team that's listening to the calls, giving feedback, and then me actually working with the team and saying, hey, Chris, next time, actually start the call in this way. Will you be using a massive group of sample calls of this is a good call, and then the AI will analyze what that is and then kick out feedback based on that? Or how will you getting that feedback to a useful point?
So at the point right now where we're at, it is analyzing the individual call and whether or not that was successful and how you can improve on that success or failure. It may actually just be, hey, you did a great job. It's a little bit more complicated that in terms of what it provides as an analysis, but it could recognize that it was a good call, that your team did a good job, and you moved on and converted that call. It could also take a situation where that call has not been successful, and there's been several different things that could be coached up with the team member, and it's able to illustrate those in its call coaching.
One of the challenges on any product like CallRail, right, is getting my end users to deploy it and leverage it, right? How are you working with the owners or the decision maker, right? That needs engagement of what's available, what's out there. Then there's some manager, and then there's this end user. Walk me through how you're engaging those three entities to make use of the new CallRail features.
That we've always found is a challenge. CallRail is a little bit like peeling back an onion in that there's a lot to the platform, and there's a lot to the platform that most of our customers don't know. And so what we've used is a combination of just marketing outreach, outreach from our account management team, follow up with respect to the sales team as need be, product demonstrations, all sorts of things to try to give people an understanding of, not only can this platform track your calls, this platform can do this, it can do this, it can do this. There's just a lot to it.
Now, in your mind, Chris, what's the most underused piece of functionality in CallRail?
I'm excited for this one.
That's a good question. I think the most underused is what we call whisper messages, which basically can allow you to set up a message that goes to your team member before the call that says this is the source that the call came from. If you're running,
I'm so happy we use whisper. We'll whisper. This is a Google call. This is a call from Facebook. This is a call. Okay, I'm so happy, but that's just pride, Chris.
Yep, that's fantastic because it's a great feature.
Yeah, it provides a little context to the front desk or whoever's answering the phone of where the call's originating from.
Yep.
Yeah. So whisper messages.
And then, like call flows, being able to sit there and route a call. As part of my previous job, I actually had customer service for a little while. And the only way, like if you were running a promotion, the only way that you could find whether your team members were discussing the promotion would be really to either go back and listen to every call or to sit there and actually sit in the customer service team. And neither of those are very efficient at all. And a lot of times we would have a particular point of contact with our customer service team that we wanted to handle this particular promotion. And being able to route those calls and then be able to understand, is your whole team following through on talking about this promotion or anything like that? To be able to do that electronically in clicks of buttons, as opposed to me spending 6, 7, 8 hours listening to that, was a huge benefit.
So you're saying that the software itself is able to analyze that call and then see, did Chris mention the teeth whitening special that we're wanting to push this month? Because I don't think we've used that. I don't know if we've looked at that at all.
No, we haven't.
Does
that use the keyword spotting?
Correct.
Chris? Yeah.
One thing for us, Chris, is the in-house, like whether it be the in-house plans that a dentist is trying to push, or if there's a specific type of special, actually finding out. Big thing for us is, how did you hear about our office? So for us on the dental side, Eric, knowing that we can actually set that up to check and see what's the percentage of the times that the practice is actually asking, where did you hear us, or mentioning when they're talking about financing, talking about the in-house financing plans if they say they don't have insurance. Like, that's definitely something we'll make use of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could put in there a phrase. You could ask it to seek out anytime somebody says we don't have insurance. Or, if you're going back to promotions that might be running, anytime that you put in Invisalign or something along those lines, just to be able to recognize those calls. You can do it and categorize it by agent so that you could see, is it a particular agent that's not having this kind of communication, or is it the whole team? There's a lot that you can do.
One other thing, since we are talking about the tagging in that part, I know before we started the podcast, I had mentioned to you that we have a team here at Pain Free that actually listens to the calls manually and then tries to understand the call, tag that call, and we would have everything from, was finance mentioned, was it scheduled, not scheduled, was it a Medicaid call, what type of service was mentioned, so was it a dental implant patient, was it just an existing patient, checking to see we have all this set of tags. Are we moving in a direction with CallRail where we have the AI that can literally, as you said, listen to those keywords and it will just automatically tag these calls accurately to a point where it's not needed to actually have an entire team run that?
Yeah, you're absolutely moving in that direction. I mean, if you, at the very least, you're moving in a direction where you can backstop your team and be able to have them move from just going through and manually tagging the call to being able to review the transcripts and or summaries so that they can see really quickly what happened in the call and really maximize the effort that they can use.
No, is that AI is the talk of everything. I mean, AI is
NVIDIA is now more valuable than Apple.
yeah. Where do you see AI going as it comes into local businesses? I mean, I know because there's a lot of things happening, right? In I'll say the local marketing of things. Number one, there's a push to online scheduling and more, direct engagement, via devices. So we're seeing industries shift toward online scheduling. We're seeing people try to engage in social media and book appointments over, not in the US so much, but certainly, in Brazil and South Africa, places like that, WhatsApp, they're booking appointments there. But also we're seeing it on Instagram and Facebook, TikTok to some degree there. And then there's this AI push. So there's a lot of things happening out there in the space. Where do you see the industry going on phone answering, phone skills, and specifically in healthcare?
I think the AI and all the improvements that are coming from AI technologically are going to allow for a much better patient experience and a much more uniform patient experience. And if you look at the broader trend that I see, services businesses like healthcare are labor intensive. They're, same thing with legal. They are a labor intensive business. As of right now, you have an aging population and a workforce that's declining in terms of its total numbers. So AI and the technological improvements that are coming from AI allow you as a small business owner of a healthcare provider to provide services that you might not otherwise be able to. So it really, I think, allows you to be more competitive if you wanted to be going forward.
I also actually did some research on this recently, looking just at what are ways in our dental practices. And that's everything, as you said now, from scheduling to how insurance is being filed. How many times do I hear from dentists saying the code was filed incorrectly or something was not done correctly? And the insurance companies are trying to find reasons to not pay out that money. That is why they remain profitable. So to eliminate, as Chris, as you were saying, the mistakes being made, the human resources that would cost my practice or my business a lot of money to be doing all of these things, impacting the convenience of my customer, of my patient, there's just going to be this incredible boom in streamlining how we're doing the administrative side and the actual functioning of a business within the next few years.
I mean, I think if you are for example, just a dentist who has your own solo practice, you're going to have a couple of hygienists. You might have an office manager, an office administrator, right? There's only so much time in the day that they have. And they still need to do a bunch of different tasks. And the technology allows them to do much more efficiently than they could 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago.
And I love a theme that I've heard repeatedly now. When you spoke about our team and I asked you about would there be not a need for them, you said no, it will help them. You just said again now with the dental practice, no, they could use it to their benefit. So that leads me to my next question of where do you see everyone goes, hey, we're scared people are going to lose their jobs. What's AI going to do in terms of replacing people? And I have a similar view to what I think you have from what I'm hearing is you should see it as something that's going to aid you, that's going to help you do a better job, not something that's going to replace people completely. How do you see that, especially in the medical industry?
I absolutely see that. I mean, I think there's two real things that are going on. One is it may be very difficult for you to hire that office manager going forward or office administrator. That's not going to be an easy position to fill. So as much as you can automate through AI, it's going to be beneficial for your practice. And the other thing is you have in the healthcare space, there's so much money that's flowing into the healthcare space, especially from private equity. And they are rolling up practices, putting together, basically franchised healthcare operations. And with that, as a smaller provider, the way that you're going to have to compete with that is to emphasize your local experience and the patient experience that you provide. And all of that technology allows you to do that in a way that you wouldn't be otherwise able to.
That's a good question. When you think about patient experience as it relates to the phone and CallRail, and I'm sure you number in the thousands of dentists that you have, on the platform. What does that mean to you? Because I completely agree. I mean, there's a ton of private equity coming in. We know they're buying up practices. The DSO is one of the fastest growing trends in dental right now. What does that mean to you when you say that patient experience, and as it relates to that phone skill?
You just look at it from my perspective as a consumer of dental services. I have certain expectations in terms of how I deal with a dentist or how I deal with an orthodontist. I deal with both of them pretty regularly right now because I've got 3 daughters and they're 15, 14, and 11. And how that practice, the experience that I have as a patient, I want to be able to communicate on a level that is not just somebody giving me the runaround. I want to be able to understand why something is happening as opposed to just what is happening. There's a lot to that I think is where personalization makes sense in services. I go back to when I was practicing as a lawyer, that's what I thought was a differentiator because I was never going to be a big firm. And just the individual service that you provide to a client makes a big difference and produces, I think, not only word of mouth referrals, which are something that can replicate as opposed to, a huge marketing budget, but also consistent business from repeat customers.
Yeah. Very well said. Yeah, I agree. There's no question that to stay competitive in a world where you're being outspent in budget, because DSOs do have a significantly higher marketing budget, and they're willing to take less profit for the short term until they establish market dominance, of course, and then things change. But yeah, it is going to come down to personalization and knowing your patient base and making sure that from that first touch of phone call or engagement to the way you confirm appointments to the way you appoint to the way you ask them for review are all going to differentiate you from a traditional chain office. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's no different than the local burger joint that you really like and the service that is delivered by that local burger joint versus McDonald's. They have a massive marketing budget, but the product has to be better at the smaller burger joint, and the service that you get has to relate more to you as a person than what McDonald's might offer.
And for us, especially in the dental space, that experience starts with a phone. That's Eric and I actually did a podcast a little while back where we said, don't call it a front desk person. It's the executive manager of sales, or what terminology did
VP of sales, or
VP of
something.
sales, because it's so important what's happening from that very first touch point. And I believe this to be true across all health, all industries within the health, business sectors within the health. So whether it be dentistry, whether it be pediatrics, just a general doctor, anything. And for me, I always push my dentist and say, bringing it back to CallRail, it's like, how do you want to provide a good experience if you don't even know what's going on the phones of your business? Because in South Africa, where I'm from, this type of technology and the innovation, Chris, that your team and companies similar to yours are working on in improving this space and how calls are recorded and the tracking of patients and all of that, we're pretty far behind in that. Like, it's kind of like it's an old telephone that's at the front of the desk. It's not very digital. And my dad was a dentist for 32 years in South Africa. And I remember, like, Elsipi, who was his front desk lady, was still like, it was all files and it was all just, I think at some point the phone they had was like the old one that you put down on the top and everything. And the call tracking and things like that was non-existent. And now when I speak to him, I'm like, Dad, how did you run your business and like not know what's going on the phones and stuff? He's like, I mean, my son, things were different then.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell dentists now. I'm like, especially my older dentists, I'm like, things were different then. Do not think what worked then is going to work now. And that's why you need these aids to improve your patient experience, to improve the way that you do things, and to make sure that from that first touch point, the patient is getting that experience that you're talking about.
I mean, there's no doubt that things were different. I mean, I think Amazon has changed things, just like a total paradigm shift in customer expectations.
Yeah.
And, just Amazon, what you think of as What I used to get 7 to 10 days from now, I expect tomorrow. And that is a paradigm shift in customer expectations. And at the same time, you didn't have the money flowing into the market that you do now from concentrated money sources. And you just didn't have that 20 years ago. You didn't have it 10 years ago in the same way. They were still trying to figure out how to get around all the restrictions on practice of medicine.
Very well said, Chris. No, that's great. No, but before we break, I do want to kind of get a feel of what does CallRail doing right now? I know you mentioned some of the conversational stuff with AI. Where do you see the next features of AI and CallRail blending together there? Are you getting into confirmation? Are you getting into training? Where do you see it going?
We've got a couple things we're working on. One would relate to text messages, just because text has become such a big part of how people communicate, especially amongst people, me and younger. And then also we're working on some stuff where we can assist through voice and being able to use voice and understand what's going on with voice and then assist the agent almost in real time.
Very cool. Now, will you do that with the whisper messages, or would there be some visual that they have in front of them, so to speak?
It's still in development, but it's going to be pretty all-encompassing.
Very nice. Cool. Go ahead.
I have one more question now because it just came to mind. A lot of our practices struggle with solicitation. Can CallRail not help us in some way to whisper beforehand to my dental practices, this is someone trying to sell you something?
Seller.
Yeah, because they get so annoyed when I listen to recordings on a monthly basis to judge how the front desk is doing. I can just hear the frustration. So I know like all the front desk people.
I'd say 30% of calls that come in are some form of solicitation or someone who wants something not about an appointment.
Yeah.
Really high. Yeah, very high. Very high, Chris. Well, it's a
just
lab.
As long as it didn't exclude the CallRail salesperson.
There you go. Or the marketing company.
Or the marketing company. Is there anything or I guess it just depends. It can come from any number. So it would probably be pretty tough to try and pin that down. But if the CallRail gurus over there, you speak to them again, please just say, can we try and figure this out for the sake of payment?
I mean, you could do, I think at the moment, you could tag anything that you recognized as spam so that did pop up when you received it again. There's no doubt you could do that.
So there's an active response of, don't push this through or catch this in the platform before so it gets sent to the phones.
Yeah. Or dump it into voicemail kind of situation.
I see. That's a good idea. I bet we could go through and find all the numbers that were solicitation and like send them to Chris and be like, blacklist them.
Anything that's on the do not or the spam list, anything like that. But I don't know if we could do a mass upload, but that might be pretty interesting.
I bet we have it out there. We capture all those calls and put them in the data warehouse. But yeah, well, that's you just kicked off a new project, Chris. Because for real, okay, in all seriousness, but if we could cut down 20% of the calls that go into the front desk, it would free up so much time for them to actually be more effective on the phone. Yeah. And that's one of the problems we face is we don't hear a lot of offices are bad at answering. They're rushed and they're just trying to, get through the calls, and getting them to slow down is a noble endeavor. Yeah.
Well, and if you could drop 3 out of every 10 calls off their radar so they could focus on the 7 that actually meant something, that would help them tremendously.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Christopher, thank you so much. Christopher Nelson, Senior Manager of Vertical Marketing, focused on healthcare. We use CallRail at the agency exclusively to help track and measure the performance of our marketing. And we're big fans of CallRail, Chris. So thanks so much for jumping on the podcast with Ian and I.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Chris.